If you find yourself thinking about food all day long, what to eat, what not to eat, whether you've eaten too much, whether you should skip the next meal, whether you need to exercise to make up for what you just ate, and if part of you desperately wants freedom, but another part is terrified of letting go of control, then this video is for you.
In this video, I'll explain what's really driving food noise, why it can feel so difficult to switch off, and what often keeps it going despite your best efforts. You'll learn why food noise isn't a sign that something is wrong with you, and why trying harder is rarely the answer. Stay with me until the end because I'll share a simple healing pivot you can begin using today to start turning down the volume on food noise.
Most people don't realize food noise isn't really about food, and it isn't a willpower problem. It's often your brain trying to protect you. And the problem is that protection has become the prison. I'm Dr. Kilty Oberlin, and I've spent more than 25 years helping people recover from eating disorders, disordered eating, and body image struggles. From the more obvious clinical end of the spectrum to the huge group of people who just don't feel sick enough to have a problem, but know that they're not free. And one of the things I hear most often is, why can't I just stop thinking about food? So what is food noise? Food noise is that constant mental commentary running in the background of your life. The thoughts before eating, the thoughts while eating, the thoughts after eating, the calculations, the negotiations, the rules, the mental bargaining. Was that too much? Should I skip the next meal? Can I make up for it later? Should I exercise more? All of these promises that you make to yourself about I'll be good tomorrow. And when food noise is loud, you're not living your life. You're managing food and your body, but it's all in your head. And here's the important part. Food noise doesn't happen because you're weak. And I'm going to say that again. Food noise does not happen because you're weak. And it doesn't happen because you lack discipline. And it doesn't happen because you haven't found the right plan. Food noise usually develops when your brain learns that food and your body are high stakes. And when something feels high stakes, your brain does what brains do. It monitors, it predicts, it scans for danger, it tries to keep you safe. So the noise isn't random, it's protection. It's a strategy. Sometimes the noise is driven by anxiety, like I can't handle the feeling of uncertainty in my body. Sometimes it's driven by fear. If I stop controlling food, difficult feelings will overwhelm me. And sometimes it's tied to self-worth. If I'm not disciplined, I'm failing. And very often it's driven by a need to belong. If I don't look a certain way, I won't be accepted. And for many people, there's a very real fear of gaining weight. And I want to acknowledge that directly, because when people hear me talk about food noise, they sometimes think, no, you don't understand. I'm genuinely afraid of gaining weight. And I do understand. The question I would gently ask is, what does gaining weight really mean to you? Not just physically, but emotionally, socially, relationally. Because for most people, the fear isn't simply about the number on the scale. It's about what that number has come to represent. Rejection, failure, judgment, a loss of control, not being attractive enough, not being acceptable enough, not being enough. And when those meanings become attached to weight, of course the brain treats weight gain as a threat. Of course the alarm gets louder. Of course food noise becomes relentless because the fear makes sense. Understanding what sits underneath the fear is often where the healing begins. Because when those fears are operating underneath the surface, the brain becomes vigilant. And vigilance sounds a lot like food noise. That's also why willpower always backfires. Because the moment you double down on control, your brain receives the message that this situation really is dangerous. And your fears are confirmed. The threat is real. And then the volume gets turned up and you hear more rules with greater urgency, more obsession about the situation, and more bargaining. And this is why so many people say the harder I try, the louder it gets. And you're not imagining that. That's exactly how the cycle works. And we also need to acknowledge something else. We live in a culture that rewards this. Restriction gets called discipline, tracking gets called health, and shrinking gets praised. So you can be trapped in food noise and still receive positive reinforcement from the world around you, which makes it harder to trust yourself and easier to assume that the problem is you. But it isn't you. It's learned protection strategy. And that's actually hopeful, because what can be learned can be unlearned, not through force, not through fighting, but through creating repeated experiences of safety. Which brings us to today's healing pivot, from alarm to safety. So I want this to be something you can actually use today and not just understand it intellectually. So here we go. Imagine you've just eaten. And it wasn't too much, it wasn't a binge, it wasn't a bad meal, just a normal meal. And then the thoughts arrive, and your sense of urgency and fear and even physical discomfort intensifies in the background. For many people, this is exactly where the spiral begins. But this is also where recovery begins, not because the thoughts disappear, but because you learn to respond differently. Simply name it. This is food noise. That's what we call it. We say this is food noise. It's not truth. It's not instructions that I have to follow. And it's not a prediction of the catastrophe that's to come. It's simply food noise. Step 2, understand what your brain is trying to do. Say to yourself, my brain is trying to protect me now. Because if food, weight, or body shape have become linked to safety, acceptance, belonging, or self-worth, your brain naturally sounds the alarm whenever these things feel threatened. That doesn't mean that danger is present. It means that your protection system has been activated. Step 3, offer your brain evidence of safety. Not tomorrow, not next week. Offer yourself a sense of safety over the next 10 minutes. Ask yourself, what would help me feel safer without feeding the threat cycle? So examples of this might be taking 5 slow breaths, stepping away from the mirror, deciding not to weigh yourself, choosing not to compensate with exercise or skipping the next meal, making yourself a soothing cup of tea or calling a friend, going outside and feeling the air, see what's happening in the world around you, observe it. Plant both feet on the floor and notice where you are while feeling the firm ground under your feet, or maybe the chair or couch under you. The goal here isn't to feel amazing. The goal is to teach your brain something new, that eating is not emergency, that discomfort is survivable, that you can have difficult thoughts without obeying them. Every time you do this, you're creating a new pathway, a new possibility, a different ending to your old story. And that's the healing pivot. It's not dramatic transformation. It's a small shift that moves you towards freedom. And here's what you're really doing. You're teaching your brain that eating is not an indicator of emergency. Discomfort does not mean that I have to strive for control. That's not the antidote. It may have been up to now. It may be up to watching this video, but it doesn't have to be moving forward. This isn't one huge breakthrough, but it's the small pivots that interrupt the cycle that create something different. Because the point of recovery isn't about developing perfect eating, because perfect eating doesn't exist. Life changes, stress happens, joy happens, seasons shift. Recovery is about being able to live a real life without your nervous system treating food like a threat. And ultimately, it's much more than food. It's about getting your life back. It's about having enough freedom that your values, not fear, guide your choices. Values like connection, family, faith, creativity, service, integrity, joy. Food freedom isn't just thinking less about food. It's creating enough space for what matters most in your life to take its rightful place. And recovery is often about finding what matters most. So if you're struggling with food noise, please hear this. Recovery is possible. Not because you'll never have another difficult thought or because you'll become perfect around food. but because you can learn a different relationship with those thoughts, a relationship where they no longer run your life. And you don't have to figure that out on your own. If you'd like more support, practical tools, and reflections on recovery, I'd love to stay connected. You can join my newsletter where I share healing pivots that you can use in real life. Small, practical shifts to help you build freedom one step at a time. You can join my newsletter using the link in the description below. I'd love to hear from you. What's the hardest part of food noise for you right now? Is it guilt after eating, the constant mental calculations, body checking, fear of weight gain? Leave a comment below. Your questions and comments will help me to shape future videos for you. Because this channel isn't just about understanding food noise and recovery. It's about helping you to build a life that's bigger than food, weight, and self-criticism. So recovery is possible, one healing pivot at a time. And remember, you don't have to walk that path alone.